Hello students, welcome to this video lesson in ICT for grade 8 series. In this lesson, we are going to learn about a type of diagram called flowchart. We are also going to learn some simple guidelines to draw the flowchart correctly. Let us start by looking at the contents of this lesson. In this lesson, you are going to learn first what a flowchart is. We will then see which symbols are used in a flowchart. We will also learn about guidelines to draw flowcharts. Then we will have an assessment to test your understanding of the lesson. And finally, we will have a recap to summarize today's lesson. What is a flowchart? A flowchart is a diagram that shows a step-by-step list of instructions that need to be followed to solve a problem. Let us start by considering a very simple problem. The problem is to make fresh mango juice. What are the steps that must be followed to solve the problem? Peel and cut ripe mangoes, add water, add sugar, add ice, mix the ingredients. Fresh mango juice is ready. Our problem is solved. One way to show the problem solving steps is in the form of a recipe. Is there any other way to show the problem solving steps? Using a diagram, of course. We will now see how a diagram can be used to represent the problem solving steps. Recall, our problem was to make fresh mango juice. Let us start. The first task is to peel and cut ripe mangoes. Then add water, sugar and ice. The next operation is to mix all the ingredients. Here we are. Our fresh mango juice is ready. Our problem is solved. Look at the diagram carefully. What are your observations? Let me help you. First observation, where to begin and where to finish is clearly indicated. Second observation, different types of shapes or symbols are used. We also note that the order in which to execute each step is indicated using arrows. Finally, we can say that someone who has never made fresh mango juice can easily make some by following this diagram, known as a flowchart. What are the components of a flowchart? A flowchart is made up of 1. Flowchart symbols. Flowchart symbols show the action that is carried out at each step in a flowchart. The second constituent of flowcharts are flow lines. Flow lines show the sequence of the steps, that is, the order in which to go from one symbol to the next. We will start by looking at each symbol one by one. The first symbol is the oval shape. The oval shape represents the beginning point or the starting point of a flowchart. The same oval shape is also used to indicate the ending point or the point at which a flowchart stops. start, begin, end or stop is written inside the oval to indicate its function. A parallelogram. A parallelogram represents both input and output actions. Input symbol indicates the point at which data is received. Output symbol indicates the point at which results are shown. The action being executed is written inside the shape. For example, input the length and width of a rectangle and output the area. A rectangle. A rectangle represents a process in a flowchart. The process box indicates that data is being manipulated. Usually operations such as addition, subtraction, multiplication or division are carried out on the data received. As usual, the task being performed is written inside the shape. For example, area is equal to length multiplied by width. A diamond shape. A diamond shape represents a decision box. It indicates a place in the flowchart where we have to make a choice. The choice is made by answering a question written inside the decision box. The question has only two possible answers, yes or no. The answer will determine the next step to follow. Arrows. Arrows represent flow lines in a flowchart. A flow line indicates the movement of data through the flowchart by connecting one symbol to another. It also indicates the next step to follow. We have seen what a flowchart is and what are the different symbols used to draw it. Now let us see some simple guidelines that will help you draw flowcharts correctly. Guidelines to draw flowcharts. First guideline. The direction of flow in a flowchart is from top to bottom or left to right. Such a flow is easier for the user to read and follow the problem solving steps. Second guideline. Every flowchart must contain a starting point and an ending point. The next guideline is about flow lines. Input, output and process symbols have one incoming flow line and one outgoing flow line. The flow line rule for decision boxes is different. A decision box has one incoming flow lines but two outgoing flow lines. Each arrow that flows out of a decision box is labeled with one of the two possible choices, yes or no. Those were some simple guidelines that will help you draw flowcharts correctly. We will now have a quick test to check how well you have understood this lesson. It will consist of some multiple choice questions followed by some true-false questions. Read the questions carefully and you will get a few seconds to give the correct answer. Let us start with the first question. A flowchart shows the steps to option A, draw symbols, option B, solve a problem, or option C, start a process. We saw at the beginning of the lesson that a flowchart is used to show the steps to solve a problem. Option B is the correct answer. Next question. A flowchart is read from A, right to left, B, bottom to top, or C, top to bottom. We learned in the guidelines to draw flowcharts that direction of flow in a flowchart is from top to bottom, making it easier to read and follow the steps. Hence, option C is the correct answer. Next question. The above shape represents in a flowchart A, a decision box, B, an input box, or C, a process box. Of course, the correct answer is option A. A diamond shape is used to represent a decision box. We continue with some true-false type questions. A flowchart may have more than one starting points. Is it true or false? This statement is false. Another thing we learned in the guidelines was that a flowchart can have only one starting point. Next question. A decision box has two outgoing flow lines. Is it true or false? This is true. A decision box has two outgoing flow lines, one for each alternative, yes or no. The last question now. The same shape is used to represent both input and process actions in a flowchart. True or false? This statement is false. The parallelogram shape represents an input action, whereas a process is represented by a rectangle. So that was the last question. Were you able to get all the correct answers? Well, I'm sure you did. It's time now to have a recapitulation of what we learned today. Some other guidelines were: input, output and process symbols have one flow line going in and one flow line coming out, whereas a decision box has one incoming flow line but two outgoing flow lines, one for each of the two possible answers, yes or no. The recap brings us to the end of today's lesson on Introduction of Flowcharts. I hope you enjoyed watching it. Until we meet for another lesson, I wish you plenty of success in your studies. Goodbye.